We gather tonight to celebrate the founding of the Ethan Allen Institute 2 decades ago by John Mitchell and its illustrious leader through most of these years, John McClaughry. Now we also address a mystery of sorts. First, a bit of history. I've known John McClaughry since the 60s, when we both served in the Vermont House. Back in 1972, I somehow managed to get myself elected governor. John McClaughry would emerge as my most vocal and persistent critic. Simply stated, he kicked my butt. Therein, my friends, lies the mystery. Fast forwarding 40 years from when I took my oath of office, what am I doing on this dais as a principal presenter? Only one thought came to mind initially, and that is, well, I greatly admire his wife, Anne. And I have exceedingly fond recall during my time as governor, presiding at a ceremony honoring her mother, Kay, a truly elegant lady from the town of Arlington. But any reasonable analysis of why I showed up here tonight, why I was asked to show up here tonight, requires a fundamental understanding of the Ethan Allen Institute on the one hand, and my public performance as a public policy maker on the other hand. Let's take a gander briefly at the Ethan Allen Institute. It's a nonprofit enterprise dedicated to public policy research. It's crafted to herald core principles embraced by Ethan Allen and the founders of Vermont, personified in the Vermont Constitution. It is slavishly committed, and John said this best in his opening remarks as a social war down, to concepts of liberty, private property, free enterprise, community, personal responsibility, and frugality. Its focus is on Vermont, with an overarching focus on our state's economic future, with special emphasis on limited government, balanced budgets, limited regulation, modest taxes, and living within one's means. John has walked before he has run, raised in the Midwest, educated as a physicist, a nuclear engineer. Political service would become his life choice in 1961. He would serve in both Vermont's House and Senate, answer the trumpet call of Ronald Reagan in 1980, and go on to serve in the Reagan White House. And he would stand for governor in 1992. To unravel the mystery, or to attempt to do so, requires me to take an analytic year as my years as a public policy maker. My 15 minutes of fame, as Andy Warhol would put it, principally flow from my 2 terms as governor and my nearly 6 years as president of the University of Vermont. A brief focus on these stewardships should primarily focus on issues of fiscal integrity, management of available resources, and ask the question whether or not stability was achieved. In 1973, my first year as governor, I was what I was. Then in October 1973, the world changed with the Arab oil embargo. Oil prices leapt from $3 a barrel to $20 a barrel. Unemployment zoomed to 9%, inflation to 10%, and our broad-based tax system would produce 6.5% negative growth. We found ourselves in a rather hellacious recession. What was our response? Well, we impounded some $10 million in appropriated funds, laid off state employees, held down spending through level funding, raised no taxes, balanced all budgets, and maintained our AAA bond rating. I became a fiscal conservative despite myself. I was summoned to UVM to deal with the diversity problem after a failed presidency. The campus had been literally brought to its knees by student and varietal dissidents who occupied the president's offices and set up operations in a shack on our green. I soon learned that the diversity issues were manageable, yet masked the real problems of the university. UVM had at the time neither a sustainable expense structure nor revenue structure. Out of control healthcare costs was a principal culprit. We internally reorganized the delivery of health services, introduced such heretical concepts as co-pays and deductibles, and shut down a mental health program that promised endless visits to one's shrink. Turning to larger issues, we concluded that UVM should contract, not expand. Thus, we consciously reduced the student population by several hundred. By so doing, we could resist calls for more residence halls and increase faculty and staff, none of which we could afford. We ran a major capital campaign, energized the development mission, and grew the endowment, including that UVM's alumni and special friends could and should pick up a larger percentage of the tab. As I moved back into private life, I sensed that the university was back on a sustainable expense and revenue base. I also reflected that 3 of my 4 years as governor had been as a crisis manager, and seemingly all of my years in academic life had been the same. In recent years, John McClaughry's spirited commentaries have made the following points on major public policy decision-making. That state government's assault on the Vermont Yankee plant made no sense given no quantifiable harm to anyone and the loss of some 600 good-paying jobs. That turning our back on baseload power such as nuclear in favor of green energies with vastly higher costs and vastly less reliability did not serve Vermont's interests. That launching a huge healthcare entitlement program without any public understanding of its ultimate cost and who picks up the tab was a long day's journey into night. That introducing a new preschool program and its union workers would further burden and exacerbate the crushing retirement obligations of our state employees and our educators. And what do I say to these public policy commentaries? I say this: I fully concur. now address John McClaughry's finest hour in life. And that came, my friends, in 1992 when he chose to run for governor. He ran against the popular incumbent, Howard Dean, in polls suggesting he had little or no chance of success. But he chose to run. I believe that decision was predicated on his belief that all elections of substance must be contested, especially the one that confers the highest honor on a Vermont citizen. He ran, I suspect, because he found it unthinkable that a free society would accept a single candidate. He ran so that Vermont's electorate could learn firsthand the opposition argument and get closer to what would soon emerge as the core principles of the Ethan Allen Institute. Like St. Paul, he fought the good fight and stayed the course. And he did something else. He joined Jim Douglas and myself here present tonight as a man in the arena, so compellingly described by President Theodore Roosevelt, who said this: "It is not the credit who counts, or how the strong man stumbled and fell, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotion, and spends his time in a worthy cause. And if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that he will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat."